I stood there, one foot on the gleaming marble step outside the Grand Varelli, while the other hovered, like I was still debating whether to cross a threshold I had paid to build. My fingers gripped the keycard, slick with sweat. Not from nerves. No, that feeling had died a long time ago, but from restraint. It took more effort to stay quiet than to scream. 7 years. 7 years of blueprints and bulldozers, of all-nighters and silent sacrifices. This lobby, these steps, the shimmer of gold lining the windows. Every inch of this place held my fingerprints like a secret, and yet I wasn't welcome, not tonight, not according to them. Hold up, Pia's voice cut through the hum of the evening, like the clink of fake pearls against a glass. This place has a dress code, sweetheart. Her hand landed squarely on my chest, light enough to avoid confrontation, but firm enough to insult. She tilted her head smug beneath a cascade of borrowed blonde extensions. Janelle and Cora flanked her like sequined gargoyles, snickering in unison, their champagne already half gone, and their entitlement bubbling faster than the drink. I looked down at myself. Thrifted blazer, clean shirt, loafers, not Armani, not Gucci, but nothing that screamed unworthy either. My style had always been simple, practical, function over flash. But to them, my presence tonight wasn't just underdressed, it was unwanted. I wasn't supposed to be here. Before I could say a word, Mariah stepped out. Her heels clicked against the marble like punctuation marks, sharp, deliberate, expensive. The slit of her emerald green dress ran high up her thigh, and her neckline plunged deeper than our last conversation. She moved like she was made of oil and envy, smooth, inflammable. For a moment, she didn't see me. She was all smiles, and waves to someone inside, playing the gracious socialite, the polished wife. Then her eyes landed on me. The shift was subtle, but lethal. Her lips, previously parting in a charming laugh, straightened into a line. She walked over, and with a voice low enough to sound like intimacy, but cold enough to cut glass, she said, "Don't embarrass me." Those 3 words, that was the entire marriage, condensed into a whisper. I didn't reply. What was there to say? That I had come only because of the invitation forwarded from a client, one Mariah probably assumed was hers now, like everything else she thought I'd left behind? That I was curious to see how far the illusion had stretched? That I wanted to see her with the mask fully on, in her kingdom of pretense. She didn't wait for a response. She turned to rejoin her circle, assuming her message had landed, but I didn't move, not backward, not forward. I stood exactly where I had, card still in hand, letting the silence stretch. Janelle leaned into Pia, whispering something they'd both found hilarious. Probably about the blazer, or the fact that I didn't retaliate. They thought I was harmless, laughable, a punchline that had wandered onto the wrong page. I should have been angry. But all I felt was a quiet, rising calm, because I knew something they didn't. I knew the punchline. And the thing about punchlines? They land harder when the room thinks you're the joke. They didn't know this sidewalk they were guarding like palace gates had once been a mud hole. And I had signed the first check to break ground on this property. Before the name Varelli was even decided, they didn't know. I'd reviewed the first 5 mock-ups of the fountain behind them. Or that I personally vetoed the 6th. Because the granite looked too cold, they didn't know the hand-painted mural inside the lobby was based on a photograph I'd taken in Naples during the last vacation Mariah pretended to enjoy. They didn't know. Because I had chosen not to tell them, sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's strategy, and this strategy had been 7 years in the making. Mariah's voice, once sweet enough to sell me a future, had hardened into weaponry over the years. Her love was conditional, sharpened with comparison and sarcasm. Measured by public approval. At first, I thought it was ambition. Later, I realized it was survival. Hers, not mine. She needed to be admired, adored, envied, and anything that threatened that image had to be hidden, diminished, or laughed off the property. I wasn't her husband tonight. I was an inconvenience. A fabric too cheap for the lighting. Pia clicked her nails against her phone. "You sure he's allowed here?" She asked, not even looking at me. Mariah didn't flinch. Not tonight, she replied. Let's keep this elegant. That one stung. Not because I believed her, but because she believed herself. I finally smiled, then not bitterly, not sadly, just with the quiet satisfaction of a man who's memorized the script and knows exactly when the curtain will fall. I didn't need to be let in. I had already arrived. They just hadn't caught up to the story yet, and when they did, well, would be worth the 7 years of silence. Janelle, who was fawning over a silver-bearded executive behind them, said, "We don't want to be late for a table." No one. That stung for a half second. Not because I believed it, but because it reminded me how far she'd fallen. The woman who once curled up beside me in an apartment with creaky floors and whispered that she didn't need mansions or marble just faith. Just partnership, she said. We're going to build something people talk about for generations. I believed her. Back then, her ambition looked like love. Now, I saw it for what it really was, a performance. And I had walked off stage too early for her liking. Voice crackled on Cora's earpiece, something about the guest list being reprinted due to a printer jam. I smiled inwardly, because I had told Maxwell to switch the final guest roster at 6 p.m. to the updated version held inside the Rosewood Lounge, which meant Cora was standing there, waving a document that was already outdated. Useless, decorative, like her clipboard. Still, she tried to maintain her air of importance, shielding her eyes from the lights above. You'll need to step aside, sir. We can't hold the line. I'm not holding anything, I replied. Mariah narrowed her eyes, sensing something shift. She wasn't sure what yet, but her instincts were too sharp to ignore the tone in my voice. I saw the exact moment her certainty cracked just slightly. It was in the way she licked her bottom lip quickly, like she was trying to reset her smile. Janelle glanced between us. Is this getting weird, or... I gave them nothing. Just a nod, then turned my gaze toward the double doors that separated the lobby from the lounge beyond, where the Raelists lived, where the real guests mingled, where the night would truly begin. You don't belong here, Mariah finally said. Her voice low, meant for me alone. It was less venom now and more desperation. A last attempt to anchor the narrative before the wind shifted. I met her eyes and held them. For just a moment too long. Long enough to remind her of everything she had forgotten. What I had built, who I still was, and how little she actually knew anymore. Then I stepped aside. Not because she told me to, but because I wanted her to feel the absence. Before the weight of the truth hit her. Belong? I was the foundation they were all standing on.